Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon. I'm the CEO and co-founder with Impetus Digital. At Impetus Digital, we've built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. Over the past 13 years, we have worked with life science companies from across the globe to help them do everything from creating virtual advisory boards to virtual medical education events, publication teams, investigator groups. And since the launch of Insight Events, we've been helping companies with large corporate events, sales training, hackathons, and everything in between. But more importantly at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations with some of the leading edge thinkers, the digital provocateurs, the entrepreneurs, we can all work together to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. But it can't just stop there. We need to sustain these relationships, and we need to build on these conversations. It's precisely the reason we have the Insight event platform, so we can have these ongoing discussions to be able to move agenda topics forward. I'm really thrilled to have one of these digital thought leaders, provocateurs at the table with me today. This is actually Indu Navar. She's the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called EverythingALS. This is a patient-focused group that brings together technological innovations and data science to support efforts with people who suffer from ALS. And it offers them an open data platform for both direct engagement with patients, as well as researchers and drug companies. Over the past 20 years, Indu has experience in being the co-founder and CEO of several software companies. She's taken them through successful exits, strategic partnerships, as well as mergers and acquisitions. So busy lady. She's an investor and a strategic advisor in many startups, as well as the co-founder of a couple of companies, Geekly and Zendota. Previously, Indu was the managing director at Woodside Capital Partners, where she advised software companies on a variety of strategic financing transactions, as well as M&A. She was also the founder and CEO of a company called Ceres Corporation. They were a provider of a SaaS platform for companies with outsourced manufacturing. Earlier in her career, Indu has been on the ground floor of several successful technology companies, including Healthion. It's now known as WebMD. And she also started her career at NASA. What an amazing career trajectory. It is so great to have you on the show, Indu. I love the fact, Indu, that you have this beautiful, amazing career in the STEM field. We're trying all kinds of things to getting more and more women in this. And you are one of the pioneers in this space. You've done so many incredible things, starting at NASA, working with them at, WebMD and startup companies and investor firms. How the heck did you end up starting to how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, great question, because unfortunately, I came to this where I am because, life was good. And as you can see, my husband was at Amazon for 18 years and built a very similar career path. And both of us kind of did an early retirement, and we were advising and investing companies. And then he got diagnosed with ALS. And, this was definitely for us, an eye-opening experience, because we have been finding problems and solving the problem. And, this is, in our effort to find treatments and potential cures during this arduous journey for us, it became very apparent there is a massive hole in talking to the researchers and the hospital system that disease like this can't have accelerated drug development for many reasons. So hence we came up with, founding this company to really solve this problem. And our business model and our platform is really focused on bringing solutions to, rare diseases and diseases like ALS.
Yeah, so maybe we can actually just start off with what ALS is. What does it stand for? So for people who just want to understand more about this rare condition.
Yeah, very, ALS is, I'd kind of heard of ALS, ice bucket challenge before it came into our life, right? ALS is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. What that means is that in the brain, the motor function of the brain starts deteriorating and failing. So the ALS patients will start losing all of their motor function. Like it starts off either any part in the body actually, and it starts off with speech, or it starts off with legs or hands. You slowly start losing function, and ultimately all the involuntary muscle starts failing as well. So it's a very hard disease. And definitely that was something, what we realized was it was very hard to diagnose as well. It took us about 18 months going from many, many different hospitals to get diagnosed.
Absolutely. Now, the thing that's really interesting about ALS, just like all other rare diseases, is they're called rare for a reason. And it's precisely the reason it's hard to diagnose. So right now, I think there's about, a little less than 250,000 people across the globe that actually has ALS. But I know that there's predictions that this is going to increase by about almost 70% by about 2040. But right now in Canada, there's only roughly around 3,000 cases. So we don't hear about this. It doesn't get the same dynamics and influence that other things like cancer and cardiovascular disease. So how on earth is anybody ever supposed to get diagnosed with this?
So there are ways, great question, Natalie. But a lot of because it takes so long to get diagnosed, and people have 2 to 5 years to live from the time they get their first symptom. And today you get, your 18 to 24 months to get diagnosis. So as you can see, a lot of them go undiagnosed medically, and because of the lifespan itself. So our goal is to really bring in today, we have a lot of methods of collecting other data other than biological, biomarkers like the blood or the CSF. We bring in more AI technology and look at all the other data, like all the sensor data, speech, facial metrics, will possibly, the gross motor functions, such as, your Apple Watch or a watch. I mean, all of them are collecting so much of the data that we are also looking at other sensors, which are very, very focused on disease diagnosis. So there is possibility today with a lot of data that we collect as humans, and we're like walking IoTs. We've got like a lot of data that we can have the way to capture it. We will be able to find very early indications of these changes through artificial intelligence, as opposed to gross changes as human beings or the neurologists have to find when we go to their offices.
I love it. I'm going to want to sort of backtrack a little bit and just more talking about the disease for a few minutes. I just, by the way, today saw an article that was published it was June 16th. It's a research article in the Neurology Journal that was talking about a new variant that they've detected in someone's genes, so the genetics. It's a TP73 variant, and it's correlated with ALS. Can you actually talk a little bit about the causes? Is it just genetic? Is it a combination of genetics and what's environmental? But what do you have to say about this new sort of research on genetics and just in causation in general?
Yeah. So today, as we sit here, we really actually don't know why somebody gets ALS. There's only 10% of them. 10% is being considered familial. That is, people who've had ALS in their family before, and we know the genes were about 20 plus genes that's implicated, but that's only 10%. And then the other 90% is called sporadic. That is, we do not know the reason. But that being said, would any of these genetic pathways, finding the pathways be relevant? Absolutely. This is a very good example of where we need precision medicine, because the 90%, we really don't know. It's not one size fits all. Not everybody is going to have that one gene and it's implicated. So it'll be portion of the people, portion of the pathways. So yes, I mean, it has been predicted that this is increasing. Not only increasing, it's also affecting younger people. I mean, today I work with a lot of people in their 20s and 30s and 40s with ALS. So it's not only being it's also getting affected to the younger and younger age group. I think today we had the youngest with ALS is being 80-year-old.
Mm, wow, that's shocking and extremely unfortunate.
Yes.
Right now, there is no treatment for ALS, but there obviously there's day-to-day suffering from it through a variety of issues with breathing to walking and a series of other things. Can you tell us a little bit about right now what ALS patients are using to manage their symptomology?
Yeah, it's all over the place. And what we have done with Everything ALS is that we have a event that we actually bring the researchers every twice a month, and we have a huge group of ALS and their family who actually attend. This is something I wish we had, and my team wish. Most of my team have lost someone to ALS and their loved ones, and we all wish we had. So we're really going with what is that we wish we had, and this becomes a way for other ALS patients or their caregivers to talk with each other about what they're doing. So in absence of really going to the hospital and asking a doctor, hey, give me some medication and you can treat me, we have to learn from each other. All of us are researchers. Every patient is a researcher, every caregiver is a researcher, and everyone is in this together. So that's kind of how we're creating this, is that when we bring all our minds together, there will be breakthrough. But if we put islands and going, somebody will figure it out with a magic wand, that hasn't happened in over 120 years. But I don't think the same method is going to work. The method we got to use is what is available in today's innovation and bringing all people together. So people find all kinds of, like I said, it's not one size fits all. It's some people go into functional medicine, some people go into different trials, and some trials have worked for some people, and some trials have had side effects for some people. So it's like we collect all that information. So we are also the advocacy that does a lot of research. So this is why our goal is to be on the ground floor and really be in touch with the patients and their caregivers and collect all that information so we can actually kind of make meaningful effort out of this.
So, Indu, there's some great things that Everything ALS is doing, which we've just described as a couple of those ideas. One of them is really creating a community through social media platforming and allowing people to find a voice and to find other people across the globe who are sharing their issues and conditions. So creating a sense of community. You also talked about how you're setting up these events in education. I know you've got one coming up on June 30th. I know that you're doing it through neurocommunication on brain non-invasive technologies. You also suggested that this is not an island, that yes, this is a rare disease. You don't know if you have it or don't have it or could have it in the future, or somebody that you love could have it. So we need to start thinking about these things in the future. But in this very busy world, this COVID world, we're riddled with data and information and distractions and technology and everything else that you can imagine. How do you try to cut through the noise and be a voice that is heard and that is going to create meaningful change?
Yeah, very good point. And that's definitely something we're very, very hyper focused on is people like us who've had this disease. I honestly think until you've come across this disease, you really do not know what it is. I can't explain how hard it is to have someone, your loved one, suddenly can't get up from the sofa and has to crawl across the room to actually, find support and get up, or this happens overnight and you just don't know what is going to happen next. So, when you have lived through that, it's kind of a, death by thousand cuts, right? And when you see your loved ones go through that, it changes you. It really changes you. And we're trying to, tell the family members who've gone through this, to be involved, in some way, small way, big way, doesn't matter. It came into our life for a reason, and we cannot just go away from it, because there is a reason that it came in, and we kind of have to be the voice. And if everybody who's had this in their lives, who've lost their loved ones, I think that's a big voice. I mean, that is a big voice, and we can all come together, and somebody's got somebody, right? And somebody knows someone that they can bring in who is either a researcher, or entrepreneur, a VC, or a startup. I mean, that's how we were able to bring a lot of the entities together. And so, being that voice, we're very vocal about, look, I'm doing it. 10 of my teammates are doing it. And I think, and we understand everybody can be involved the same way we are, but even a small, a drop in this bucket can create an ocean.
It does, absolutely, the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Indu, the world has changed. I mean, COVID-19 has just turned everything upside down. There's been a lot of tragedy, but certainly there's been some groundswell of positive momentum that, if you sort of look under the covers, there's some silver lining in there. And, I think what's been really interesting is the conversation that's starting about mental health, brain health, and then as you interweave into that, a whole discussion and discourse on neurological disorders, right? Because they're all somehow, contained and associated. So this is probably also bringing some illumination to conditions like ALS. And in all of that, there's been a digital transformation. There's been a huge confluence, if you will, of people moving into the technological space with an acceleration of 5 to 10 years in a very short period of time. You also mentioned earlier in our discussion that the old way of managing neurological disorders, or ALS specifically, is through, the naked eye and, heuristics and belief systems and stuff that you might have seen in medical school like 20 years ago, and, all these sorts of things. So it's extremely slow and arduous process. But you're also suggesting that with this technological advancements, that the small glacial movements and changes can be detected in a way that a human being can't. So I'm actually wondering if you could speak to some of these changes that are noticed through speech or through voice recognition. How can an AI or machine learning system be able to detect or predict if somebody is going to be having ALS?
Yeah, great question. Actually, there's a lot of publications that's been written on speech is one of a really good way of figuring out neurological disorders, and it's something that AI picks up, not human beings. We can't see any difference, but it's just that those small changes, because the muscles around our vocal cord is very sensitive, and it can actually make small changes, and so this is a published data, published in publication. But when you have to build a real tool from it, you have to go to the next level of quality assurance. Commercializing a product is a very different beast than trying to come up with small sample and writing a paper on it. So when you take it from this publication, now let's go make it a reality. That's what we're doing. We look at ourselves as commercializing these products. I mean, we work with the startups who have this product, and really we match to the disease. We bring in a lot of data points. And for example, with the speech, our goal was to get 1,000 people. That includes people with ALS and something called PLS that only affects certain portion. It's not fatal because it yeah, hit the breathing, but pretty much you have the same motor neuron disease, and ALS, PLS, and family members who might be prone to ALS because you really have higher probability. I think the real research said 40 to 60% higher probability that you would have ALS if somebody in your family, has ALS. And then the third is just controls. Anybody can participate. Anybody, who have no neurological conditions. So you kind of need to get all of this data set together and bring the researchers who are AI experts to come up with different modeling. And the startup which we work with called modality.ai, they have their models as well. And that's kind of what we do, is we accelerate that process, bringing in AI and machine learning ready data that can be shared with the researchers. And just as an example, in less than 6 months, we were able to engage over 520 participants, and our goal is to get 1,000 participants by August. So that means, these things have never been done like this before. People have never had this amount of data, or, but when you, like I said, when you have to take something, a quality product that goes through probably FDA approved, and make that into a real product, like what we are used to building in real, real software world, you need to do this. And today it does allow for us to go on social media, recruit people, bring in the data, and bring in the data infrastructure. And that was one of the things my husband innovated, is AWS at Amazon. And we use a lot of the power of cloud today to bring in a lot of the data and the, ability to not only store, to also compute. And so I think we have the technology today. We just have to get these puzzle pieces to work together so we can actually make a difference.
So really interesting, Indu, on the voice and the changes that happen because of the condition, and that AI can pick up those slight variations and then track that over time, which is really neat. I was also curious about your perspective on facial metrics. There's been a lot of controversy about facial recognition and all the sorts of things. But despite all of that, is there a positive utilization of that kind of a biometric? And how is that used for potential diagnosis or clinical trials?
So again, we're in the discovery mode, right? I mean, we're going to try to do many, many sensors, and probably half of them we won't find a biomarker, and the other half, and even if we can find some of them, that this is a process of discovery. And having said that, yes, the facial metrics, not only is there a some study that we're doing with 500 people, were found some early indication of facial metrics that we can find. But if not, the the voice recognition, the accuracy of voice recognition goes even higher when you have the facial recognition. So we could use it for getting accurate read of the speech, and also if we can find the facial recognition, facial as a metric, to get as a biomarker, that's addition. So so it's kind of, we're looking at it with no preconceived notion, no, really looking at it as what we find, and we're still in the process of figuring it out. But to add to that, I'm going to come to, the question you did not ask. For example, for Microsoft has approached us with.
I was going to ask you that.
Okay, good.
I have that on my list. Sorry. Okay. And so what I would also like to find is you are working with a lot of collaborators, and hospitals seem to be a no-brainer. I mean, I know that you've done work with MIT and MGH and UT, and universities like UT Austin, but there's a lot of the big tech companies that are coming in, and and they're all vying and trying to go in and positively disrupt healthcare. One of them is Google. So we'll talk about Microsoft in a minute, but what are some of the potential collaborations and interests that is going on at the university, at the healthcare institution, and in the big tech sphere?
Yeah. So with a lot, I mean, people want to come into the space, and again, trying to find a way to, really add value. So with the Google, we're in discussion with their Google Euphonia team, that is to take our speech recognition and build really tools for mainly lifestyle improvements. So with the data that we have, that's another difference we do, is that when we have this open data platform, it's used for early diagnosis of the disease and tools for clinical trials, so that we can actually look at the progression and also improvements if some drugs are actually improving. And the third is the lifestyle improvements. So we have different partners who sit in, one, two, or the three buckets. So, or some of them in couple of them. So with Google Euphonia, that's what they're interested in, is looking at it to come up with, using AI to come up with a lot of the lifestyle improvements, with speech recognition or at home, integrated with at home. So many of those tools.
I love it. And you did bring up Microsoft, and I do notice that your upcoming event and the big clinical study that you are doing with modality.ai software is in conjunction with Microsoft. What they're actually doing just blows your socks off, and I can't wait for you to tell us about it. Because the thing is, when you usually associate Microsoft in the old way that they were the Excel people, the PowerPoint people, the PlayStation people. Now they're getting into health. So what on earth are they doing with you, and what is this clinical study all about?
It's really, if you really see, we're in a very fascinating space of computer science and health coming together. And that's what, the data science and the AI is going to be very, very powerful, because a lot of the health is just pretty much is converted into data, and that gets into the fusion of computer science. So I would say that our relationship, or what we're working with Microsoft, if you go to everythingals.org/research, you'll find this study, and there's a video on it. This study that they did with Bing search engine was to look at the technical parameters of Bing search. It's really not what you're looking at, nothing about privacy. It's a very private, but mainly looking at the technical data, as such as keyboard use, or how long you take to move your mouse, or how long, the way you move your mouse. If you don't know, it's been predicted that the way you use your online, the keyboard and the mouse and the pace, it's as unique as a fingerprint. So they can actually predict different diseases with something called random forest classifier AI, that what are the changes that's happening with the way people are using technically on the Bing search, right? Mm-hmm. And with that, they can predict ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, very early, like many, many years early, with those minute changes in the behavior. And so that's something that, to take it to real life and say, okay, now how do we say we know that they really did get diagnosed with ALS, because you can see the searches they're doing now, it's diagnosed. But now we're taking this to real patients and saying, look, if you ever used Bing in your past, just give permission to say you are diagnosed now officially, and then let's go and validate that, the thesis, or validate that, the research that was done. So then, once that's done, we can take it to the next level of productizing some of these findings and take it to market.
It's absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure that somewhere through that, Google has their Google search, and I'm sure there's going to be ambient biometrics associated with that, and culminating this all into one big giant data lake that people can skim in and start doing some of these predictive analytics. Yeah. So I find that sincerely exciting and really innovative.
So where we become is we're kind of the glue, where, yes, the technology companies have great thesis AI, but they don't have access to the patients to validate it. So we are the ones who manage those relationships and that research, and make sure, there's we run like a software as a service company in a lot of ways to help collect that data.
It's just brilliant. I could see the number of partnerships that you have created is just phenomenal. One that comes to mind that is relatively recent, I think that this just got announced in March of this year, is your partnership with Roche Canada, their Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence. I know this is actually being done under the banner of the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research, or CFAR. It's actually kind of a pan-Canadian. They have 3 different key AI sites in Canada, which is AMI, Mila, and the Vector Institute. So you brought all of these people into this really neat partnership called End ALS Challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about what this really interesting and intriguing initiative is?
Yeah. This goes back to, like you said, can you be the voice? Can you bring people in, right? It all started off with a call to a good friend of mine is at Roche. She's a director of AI. And I've known her for 15 years, and she would always talk about this genomics, transcriptomics. I had no idea what she was saying. And, with this, that call got me into the right people, and they said they want to just help. They didn't have ALS as an initiative. They said, fine, we'll help you. And that got into now officially being accepted at Roche as something they want to put resources in from the AI team. So it starts with people, right? It starts with the people to come together and saying, this is very interesting. And Fanny Say, who runs the AI Center of Excellence in Canada, she went and, convince the executive team that they should work on this because they have support from people like us who are the patient advocacy group, and we are very motivated. So that's what they look for too. They look for motivated people to actually help them. So I really think it's a beautiful, relationship. And together what we did was we put together a Kaggle. Kaggle is owned by Google. It's a data challenge, and we took the transcriptomics data from Answer ALS, where I'm part of the Answer ALS as well. They had collected some of the data, and it was not enough data. So we scratched our head, and Roche said, we've done some rare diseases. Let's take this and bring another startup called Netramark to really look at the data and make it ready for challenge. So it took everybody's effort. Kaggle was amazing. It took Roche and our team from Answer ALS, which includes people from Gladstone Institute, neurologists to Johns Hopkins, genomics expert, and the Roche team. I mean, we all came together with the Netramark and put this together, and it was it shows that when we all come together with our information, it was just beautifully put together, and we went live, and it resulted, the Kaggle challenge ran for about 2 months, and it resulted in findings for potential pathways to leading to ALS. So we are very, very, cautiously optimistic with these findings, and we're going to do a follow-up sessions with the Kaggle winners to go and look for further discoveries.
That's beautiful. I've also been participating in the past with MIT COVID-19 challenges. Maybe your next frontier would be getting the ALS in there and setting up a hackathon. What's your thoughts about doing some of those with the myriad of universities that you're affiliated with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's come up, and that's in the works, and we're kind of learning this process. This is new for ALS. It's probably new for rare diseases. I know Roche actually got a call from other rare diseases saying, we heard that you're doing for ALS. Would you do it for us as well? And so we're really opening up. Like I said, it's a perfect combination of computer science and biology, and bringing in the CS, we've actually learned through last 20, 25 years, we have innovated so much in, creating open data, open source, people actually motivated to solve hard problems. And now we're kind of trying to bring that to biology, trying to get those biological data. So I think this is just scratching the surface. This is something we just learned, and absolutely our goal is to use these resources that's there outside who are motivated. We got 48 submissions for this, and we were blown away with each one of them. And for us, it was very hard to select the top one, and we landed up selecting 7. So,
Wow.
so we just saw such huge potential, because this is not about, this is about finding bright people and working together. It's not like, Olympics where you get the medal and you walk away, right? This is like just scratching the surface. We've just began this process.
So you come from a venture capital background, in investment space. What is the next step for those Kaggle winners, the 7 that you have selected? How are you going to help approach that? Is it going to be an ALS incubator, venture
Yeah,
funded,
very,
or
very, very
private
good.
equity? What is the future of that?
Yeah, very good point. I think this leads down to, what we think is the next step. I mean, our goal is to nurture entrepreneurs in the end, because that's who will solve the problem. And of course, entrepreneurs married with researchers and academia and pharmaceutical companies. That's the combination we're bringing together to really have the expedited results. So we are, that's one of the things we offered for the Kaggle winners, are access to venture capital, access to network. And we've got a lot of the network, very well known tier one venture capitalists who will actually take the calls with them. And that's kind of in the process of us setting that up right now. And also we're setting up a fund with Everything ALS under the umbrella. It's called Procure Fund, to generate a massive collaborative movement among researcher, pharma, and these startups. And our goal is, again, to expedite treatments and potential cures for neurological diseases. So Procure is really focused on bringing AI to neurological treatments.
Beautifully done and spectacular watching this all unfold in front of you. We talk about ALS, but your husband also worked at AWS.
Yes.
Amazon is going in all kinds of directions, including healthcare. We talk and hear a lot about changes of point of care, going from the hospital and physician office to the home environment, and then even in the car, with all kinds of sensors and these ambient biometric opportunities. Everything from what goes on in the bathroom to what you're doing in front of your TV. What is some of your predicted plans or ideas about what Amazon might be able to do, or in concert with you, future clinical trials or ideas that they might already be generating?
So yes, Peter started at Amazon very early, and he was one of the founding team of AWS. And I've seen him how he would think big about, even from the beginning, about what the possibilities were and what they became. That was definitely an inspiration for me to say, what is the possible? So even though we're starting small, I think this could actually change the way we look at diseases, how we actually come and cure diseases. And I'm in touch with a lot of the executives. We have some of the key executives at Amazon as our board members, or in the circle. So we're in constant talk with them, and we'll see when we are ready to announce these partnerships. We'll just make sure that we do, let everybody know.
Financial assistance is always a challenge. Being in the pharmaceutical industry, it's always one thing about coming up with a cure or a therapeutic or anything, something that helps with condition management and clinical trials, et cetera. But there's always somebody who needs to pay the bill, right? And that's always when it becomes the challenge, and a lot of finger pointing and all that sort of thing. So you have also been really innovative with Everything ALS, with a program that you call the Caring ALS. It's sort of a crowdfunding where you're kind of going both to communities and corporations. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and the platform you're using in which to gather donations?
Yeah. Good point. When we started off with, how do we actually help the people with ALS? We just didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to go and offer solutions that's, really meaningful. And Caring ALS was launched as a platform for fundraising. My brother, Indu Navar, he has been in bill pay for many, many years. So he's pretty much, this is his passion too, is to help people with diseases to pay the bills. And if you don't know, the ALS is also called the disease of bankruptcy. That is, people go bankrupt trying to help people with the ALS. So it's kind of one of those very, very hard disease. There's a lot of costs. There's no treatments that can actually, and if people want to use alternative treatments like acupuncture or other things, it's not covered by insurance. So you kind of got left with nothing. So this is a platform which is crowdfunding, and my brother Mukesh, he had a company that was doing bill pay, so we repurposed that to actually kind of bring in this crowd funding platform. And so what it is that people with actually any disease, but we've focused now on ALS, which will open up to any disease, is they actually come in, they submit their bill and say how much is the bill, and the payment will go directly to the providers. So unlike GoFundMe and others, where you don't know where the dollars are going to go, this definitely will go to pay that bill. And, everybody can be sure that, they're really helping that to actually get that treatment for those patients.
Lovely. You are a serial entrepreneur, and I think are also currently running other regimens, companies, initiatives, and they're probably all working in concert somehow together. I know one of them is Zendota, and the other one is Geekly. Are these still initiatives that you currently work on? And if so, how do you combine those efforts with the work you're doing with Everything ALS?
Yeah, very good point. So, each one had a different purpose. So Zendota was something my husband and I started to advise and invest in companies. So it was an umbrella company where we actually invested out of. So I still do the investments from Zendota to some of the companies that I work with, and then with Geekly, what I learned from Geekly was really we were focused on bringing in cloud innovators, to focus on how to help startups. And that is really transformed now, which I'm transforming now, not just cloud, it's more on healthcare. So healthcare researchers, healthcare technology companies, and how the larger companies can help startups. So it's really, I feel like everything I've done in the past has really helped to morph to do what we're doing today. And I'm 1000% focused on bringing, on ALS and neurological diseases. So now everything is funneled into what I'm working on is either Everything ALS or creating a procure fund under the Everything ALS bucket to bring in the startups really focused on neurological treatments.
Somebody may take this the wrong way, but as the old cliche says, that never waste a good crisis. So it really depends on if you're a half glass full or empty, but in every tragedy, there is opportunity. And so this world of ALS has opened up, and all the things that you've ever done are just kind of culminating in the same forward direction. It feels to me like Zendota could be the perfect place for your startup incubators and sort of kind of stemming from there under that holding company. So I'm also just curious of any other experiences that you feel would be really important for these startups, these entrepreneurs getting into the space, biotech, softwares, medical device, apps, etc. What general advice and information would you share with them? If you, for example, were starting and you were talking to yourself 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, find find a need that isn't being addressed adequately, and come up with a solution that is, in keeping patient in mind about how do you actually help the patients, and also build a team that will help them grow into their productive roles, because creating the ecosystem is very important. And outside the company, finding mentors and affiliations and partners, like ourselves or other people who can actually build, the communities around, is very, very important, because network like crazy, because I think the contacts that, you make can make a difference between success and not being successful. So I would say, I think the time is right. I would say the timing is really right to do something in healthcare.
Do you believe there will be a cure for ALS?
I'm just going to rephrase that question to say, how will we find a cure? for ALS because we have to start now. And I said, one of the quickest way and most efficient way to start is by using AI technologies and machine learning to discover and quantify the building blocks of when ALS starts and how quickly does it progress. So that's like the building block. And I think if we can actually crack that building block, I think the answer is there.
You've obviously had great success in your life, and you're fantastic at networking and bringing people and platforms together. What do you think that your secret sauce is in this? What are some of the key learnings, and what is it that you bring to the table, and how do you make that happen?
It's a hard question because it's a personality, I would say. I always knew I wanted to do something on my own, or, so I would say never take anything as an answer. Even when I started this, I heard a lot of, you can't do this, you can't do that. And the minute I asked, why not, why not, why not? When people didn't have an answer of why not, I said, yes, then that means it can be done. So I think be persuasive, I think, and also I think my ability to network and building these companies. 20 years ago when I started my software company, I had to start from scratch because, even though I had Healthion in my background, it's still, you have to prove yourself, and might be being a female helps because, at that time there were not many female entrepreneurs, so I had to prove that I'm capable of doing, because it's not like I'm going to get married and have a child and just leave the company, right? I mean, there were a lot of questions like that came about, and so you had to prove a lot. And I think all of these things, like I said, everything I've ever learned in all of my life has come together here, and I feel like I use every part of things, and it just boggles my mind sometimes. I'm going, wow, I never thought every skill and everything that I've put together in the last, lot of years, building companies or starting my career, has definitely helped me here. And I would say the biggest thing is networking. The biggest thing is value proposition, really finding what the value proposition is and really communicating that value proposition. And I would say the other thing I spend a lot of time is behavioral modeling, understanding, what is the people's behavior and why they do certain way. And so creating your value proposition, marrying that with the behavior modeling, that's kind of one of the things that I've learned and that I use, because in the end, everybody wants to be successful, and it has to be a win-win.
You run a nonprofit, and these are definitely built around patients, your husband being one of them, and many other people that you know and care for. And so the discourse on inclusion, diversity, decentralized clinical trials, and everything in between is really reaching the forefront, especially since COVID-19. And we've had to build and bridge more resilient endpoints, the use of wearables, technologies. Where does everything ALS fit in that discussion? And around this acceleration of adopting people from across the globe using decentralized trials and really pivoting the healthcare discussion and build it around the patient.
Right. So that's our core offering in a lot of ways, because all the tools, the AI tools that we're bringing in to figure out the sensors, and because it is to measure these different data points at home, right? People can be at home and do their speech, their facial metrics, their Apple Watch or different sensors. It's all done through home, and we collect the data and we figure out, because that's what is going to make a big difference, is because we also get very the lot of the data points we need. And I'm very, very passionate about it, because when Peter was going through this, it was really, my mind was blowing about why we're doing a lot of the things, and he is losing his function, but we needed to go every few weeks to Mayo Clinic, Minnesota, and it's an hour away from the airport. And you take somebody who's losing, who can't walk, is in the wheelchair, who has got like such difficulty, and you have to go there so that they can do your breath analysis and your some muscle thing. Nothing big, no treatment. So it's ridiculous. If you ask me, I asked them, I said, why do we have to come to all the way to do this test? We live in Seattle or the Bay Area. We have so many hospitals. We can drive anywhere and get you the test. Well, sorry, it's part of the research and trial. I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a lot of these were not put together with patient and the disease in mind. It was templatized. And it's ridiculous because on one hand, we actually say, oh, I can't get patients. Patients are falling off. They're falling off the trial. And they're not doing these things. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody because, everybody's doing it because the way it's done. And our goal is to bring in these tools where you can measure more accurately, more things, being at home. And yes, decentralized trials are a way to go. And COVID taught us, many people actually were able to go and do it through, Zoom or other, web devices, web conferencing, talking to the patients, getting the measurement as they were doing it. People could watch them, right? And so everything was possible, but it wasn't done. So this was a complete, this is a good way for us to marry the technology. Technology is there. It's this processes that's actually, not being used. So
outdated.
Yeah.
And outdated. So lots of work going on in genetics. We just heard recently of the SPAC with the 23andMe and all the kind of work that's happening. And even some of the discussion that's going on with potentially doing full genome testing for babies so that as you start to go up in life, that you're actually being able to monitor your progression versus yourself. So the epitome of personalized medicine. What is Everything ALS thinking around advocating for genetic testing and genome testing?
Yeah, I think that's something, that's why we did the Kaggle challenge with the data that we have to see what we can find. And we're slowly going and uncovering that, because the thing is we need to have a good value proposition to go and propose this and get funding. And so it's kind of, we're doing the startup way, that is, let's go do something and find the value prop, and then we can go get the funding to fund it and scale it. So that's another difference, is we don't wait for the fund and then say, hey, let's go do it, right? Like, so we've now developed our value proposition as we're speaking. I'm putting together all of those presentations together. So we've got a lot of people who are interested in taking this to the next level. So we are going to be getting a little bit more deeper into it.
Not that you want to disclose any of it, but I'm also just curious. There's a lot of work that Elon Musk was hit with his project, the Neuralink, the embedment on the cerebrum and all of the kind of work that's happening around paraplegics and other sorts of things. Any possibility of a collaboration there for ALS?
So we did have, so June was our month for brain-computer interface technologies to come and address ALS. So I think we're putting the video out shortly. That'll be available. So Neuralink did come and speak earlier in the month about ALS and how they're actually trying to do the 2022 trials. And they want to know more about what our people with ALS go through and how they can help. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. They do want to have access and more closer collaboration. And also we had BrainGate, another brain-computer interface, who's already doing trials in ALS. They're doing it at Mass General and Harvard, and we're helping them, get awareness to the patients, patient recruitment, and they just spoke on the 16th as well. So yes, and what was fun is, like, I think BrainGate or Neuralink, one of them, I should mix both of them, but anyway, showed that how one of the stroke patients who can use the BrainGate, who was actually started getting the mobility, started strengthening the muscles as they did more and more. they didn't have to use the brain gate. I mean, one of the neuro BCI, they could actually start walking. They regained a lot of the strength back. So the thing is, we don't know a lot of the possibilities once somebody goes into a wheelchair, but and what are the, so this is another avenue for learning a lot more about the disease.
Indu, this is fascinating, phenomenal work. Love the inroads that you and your team at Everything ALS have already done. Love it. If anybody who's listening to the show today is interested in connecting with Indu, finding out about potential partnerships, investments, hackathons, or anything else, we will be leaving Indu's contact details in the show notes, so please be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed this conversation, we also encourage you to check out impetusdigital.com. This is precisely the kind of things that we help startups and big pharma and everything in between life science companies to be able to work with payers, investors, physicians, allied healthcare providers, and patients, be able to look beyond the pill and to move some of these technological innovations forward. How are you going to create new policy, procedures, getting work done, developing trials and other ideas? We help you through asynchronous and synchronous touch points, and we white service this all along. So we would really appreciate if you can like and subscribe to our channel, and we would love if you can leave us a review on our podcast. We want to thank everybody for their time. Indu Navar, thank you so much for a fantastic conversation, and we wish everybody a great day ahead.